Say what you will about House of the Dragon not sticking to canon events, but one thing the show has truly nailed is the depiction of magic in the world of Ice and Fire. Initially, we figured this show would stick to showing us Targaryen magic exclusively, but we're so glad to have been wrong on that point. We think that House of the Dragon has arguably answered more questions about the old gods and their magic than Game of Thrones ever did, and now they've confirmed something book fans have been waiting a long time for. The Green Men are perhaps the most enigmatic creatures in the entire franchise, and we've seen them not once, but twice. So who are they, and why are they showing up in a story that's supposed to be all about fire and blood? Well, we're here to answer all those questions and more, so put on your spoiler hats and let's get right to it. The most powerful agents of the old gods. The Green Men origins. People often forget this, but Game of Thrones was set in a world where magic was on the decline. Yeah, we saw the White Walkers and warging and a shadow baby being born. We saw the House of the Undying and Dany hatching her dragons and Bran becoming the Three-Eyed Raven, but for some reason, most of the magic in Game of Thrones felt mechanical, and it had a lot less mystique than what we see in House of the Dragon. George R.R. Martin's magic system isn't simple or mechanical, it's creepy, it's ancient, it's beyond complete human comprehension, and it's rooted in forces that even he hasn't fully addressed, at least not yet. Game of Thrones oversimplified the nature of A Song of Ice and Fire's magic, and we'll never forget how they explain the creation of the others through the use of dragon glass. By contrast, House of the Dragon is set at a time where magic still has some authority in the world, considering the sheer number of dragons the Targaryens possess were said to be anchors for spiritual powers. Well, some people might have disliked the whole Daemon Targaryen is being haunted at Harrenhal side plot from Season 2. We loved it, because that's exactly how magic reads in Martin's books. It disorients you, makes you suggestible, it's terrible and fragmented, and never as clear as the visions Bran Stark sees in Game of Thrones. Plus, another thing that Game of Thrones completely glossed over in its rush to wrap up is the other old races that exist within Westeros. The Seven Kingdoms are home to another group of nature magic users who are arguably more powerful than the Children of the Forest and even the others, the Green Men. The Green Men are perhaps the most enigmatic creatures from the Song of Ice and Fire. They're mostly referenced only during discussions about the Pact, which was the peace treaty signed by the Children of the Forest and the First Men thousands of years ago. The Pact was signed after centuries of bloody warfare, and part of its terms were that the First Men abandon their persecution of the Children and give them dominion over the deep forests of Westeros. To ensure this pact endured, the Green Men were assigned to defend its sacred signing place in perpetuity, and after the pact was signed, the First Men gradually abandoned their own gods for the old gods. There hasn't been a single Green Man sighting since the pact was signed, and their existence has descended into rumor and hearsay. Those who believe in the old tales claim that they're called Green Men because they have green skin, green hands, or green hair, or all of the above. They're also said to possess antlers like stags and elks in some stories, and said to ride elks as well. The Maesters of the Citadel believe that the Green Men are nothing more than an order of ancient humans assigned to protect the pact site and adorned in green robes. But House of the Dragon has shown us that folklore turns out to be truer than logic in many cases, because we saw an antler-hooved and furry beast in the last episode of Season 2 before Daemon Targaryen touched Harrenhal's weirwood, and we saw another in the first episode of Season 3. Keep that in mind during this video. If they're not people cosplaying as satyrs and are actually the Ice and Fire versions of satyrs themselves, what exactly was the purpose of the Green Men, and why are they showing up again? Well, that's a complicated question that can't be answered fully in this video, but we'll give you the relevant bits of information. The Green Men seem to have been the other nature magic-based species that occupied Westeros alongside the Children of the Forest before the First Men invaded the continent. We say this because the common ancestor of several great houses from the Reach is a figure called Garth Greenhand, and he's described in folktales with features that are consistent with the Green Men's descriptions. Although Garth appears to have been some sort of nature and fertility god, because it's said he taught the First Men agriculture, had a sling bag filled with seeds of all the plants in the world, and that in his presence maidens ripened, bearing crones became fertile again, and expecting mothers brought forth twins and even triplets. Garth is the ancestor of House Gardner, the High Kings of the Reach, before before Aegon's conquest of Westeros, and he's said to have sired a son called Brandon of the Bloody Blade, who many suspect is the founder of House Stark, Bran the Builder. Most importantly, the Green Men seem to have been the first creatures from Westeros to make contact with the First Men, as opposed to the children, or at least fraternized with them openly. And the fact that they're all gone, except for in one location, isn't just highly suspect. It suggests that they played such a crucial role in the events of prehistoric Westeros that they needed to be isolated. Plus, there's the fact that the Green Men were supposedly green seers, like Bran Stark, which suggests that they were basically the satyrs to the Children of the Forest's wood nymphs, and there is evidence supporting this idea in the books, which we'll get to shortly. It doesn't make sense for the children to agree to a peace deal that marginalizes the strongest members of their society just to make peace with the humans, but it does make sense if those members did something that caused them to lose standing within both Children and First Men society. As for what that is, well, you're just gonna have to watch this video till the very end. But now that we've established that the Green Men are analogous to satyrs from Greek mythology, and that they were green seers like the Children of the Forest who have been confined to a single location for millennia, let's now talk about where they are and why that matters within the context of House of the Dragon. Where are the Green Men today? Why they showed up in Season 3, Episode 1. The Children of the Forest and the First Men signed the Pact on the Isle of Faces. This is an island within a massive lake in the middle of Westeros that, when seen from an aerial point of view, looks like a gigantic eye. That's why this lake is called God's Eye, and we don't think that's a name given to it by the First Men. If the children's magic is rooted in nature, and the land itself is God to them, and this island surrounded by water reads like a biological feature from that perspective. What's even more interesting is the fact that the Pact's signature was sealed not only with the Green Men being isolated on the Isle of Faces, but also by carving faces into every tree that populated that isle. As you might know if you've brushed up on your Westerosi lore, the First Men initially waged a war against the children precisely because they figured out the children were spying on them using the weirwoods they carved their faces into. And we know this is possible because in the books, Bran Stark has warged at least a couple of weirwoods. This probably explains why the oldest accounts of Westerosi history recognize the Green Men as the wise men / counselors of the Children's Society because they had all the children's powers, but were bigger, stronger, and more powerful than them. We've seen the Weirwood Cave where Bran Stark takes shelter after traveling north of the Wall. If a Green Man had been anywhere near that place, it would have probably bloomed like a field in summer and not felt like a hollow hill dying of winter. That's likely because in the show, the children were depicted as the creators of the White Walkers, but in the books, that might actually turn out to be the Green Men instead. It's possible that the House of the Dragon team, which has taken it upon itself to quote-unquote fix the lore inconsistencies introduced by Game of Thrones, has brought the Green Men in to address this exact contradiction. When people got pissed by Arya Stark, who's neither a Valyrian nor a Targaryen, being the one who killed the Night King and fulfilled the prophecy of Azor Ahai, Ryan Condal's team decided to link her act to the prophecy through her dagger. They turned that blade into the Valyrian steel dagger of Aegon the Conqueror himself and had his prophetic dream of the Song of Ice and Fire engraved into its blade. Daenerys Targaryen and Jon Snow didn't use saddles or whips or any kind of safety equipment whilst riding their dragons, who were a lot more docile than they ought to have been, but House of the Dragon has all the right equipment, and its dragons have their own distinct personalities. Just look at how Vhagar and Sheepstealer disobey their riders' commands as though they have their own wills. The dragon bond has been focused on heavily as well, so have the lizard babies that the Targaryens pop out from time to time, but also the disorienting nature of the prophecies. Every vision we see in House of the Dragon is nowhere near as sharp and straightforward as the visions from Game of Thrones were. And then you've got Alice Rivers, who seems to be part woman, part goat, and all old gods wood switch. We didn't even get to see the ghost of Highheart in Game of Thrones, let alone other wood switches that make accurate predictions about the future, like Mother Mole and her ilk from Beyond the Wall. Yeah, the core narrative of House of the Dragon has taken massive liberties with the source material by cutting out characters like Maelor and Nettles, but in terms of sheer world building, it has outclassed Game of Thrones by simply making Westeros feel as magical as it does in the books. The reason we bring all this up in relation to the Green Men is A, our assertion that the show might be trying to fix that White Walker origin story by retconning it. Set photos from Season 2 showed us a green man in hair and makeup, and if you take away all the trappings of nature magic from that guy, what's left is the exact body shape and skin texture of the White Walkers, but also B, their location is why they're so important to House of the Dragon's narrative. The God's Eye Lake is where King Harrenhal, aka Harren the Black, erected his monstrosity of a castle known as Harrenhal, and Harrenhal's most famous memory, or infamous, based on how you want to look at it, comes from being burned by a dragon. Most human beings who have tried accessing the Isle of Faces have been repelled by what feels like the Isle itself. Boats that enter the pewter waters of the God's Eye get overturned by inexplicable waves or are shooed away by massive flocks of ravens. The Isle seemingly defends itself from all human elements. The dragon can land in the middle of its eye with a flap of its wings. While Aegon the Conqueror burned Harrenhal, it seems as though he didn't touch its godswood because the weirwood there is still alive. Still, the threat of a dragon being close to a weirwood again, with Daemon's occupation of Harrenhal, must have been what drew that green man off the Isle of Faces and into Harrenhal's Godswood in Season 2. After Aegon's conquest and before Daemon's occupation, Harrenhal only saw dragons in the sky during brief periods of peaceful or diplomatic occupations. While battles were fought along the shoreline of the God's Eye, Harrenhal itself was spared dragon flames. When Maegor the Cruel killed every member of House Harroway of Harrenhal, he didn't use Balerion for the deed. When Rhaena Targaryen moved into Harrenhal to live out the rest of her days, she didn't use Dreamfire for anything more than leisurely flights. When the Great Council of 101 AC was held, every dragon near Harrenhal was there for the diplomatic purpose of electing a new king. No dragons arrived at the castle with the intention of burning it again or potentially harming its heart tree until Daemon's arrival, and it's possible that his hostile intent was the trigger for his hallucinations throughout Season 2. That green man he saw shortly before touching the weirwood at Alice River's behest could have been making sure that Daemon wasn't about to finish what his ancestors started, and maybe he was also taking a look at the man whose progeny would birth the future saviors of the world. Daenerys Targaryen and Jon Snow were both born from the descendants of King Aegon III, who was the firstborn son of Daemon and Rhaenyra. This could also explain the Green Man's return in Season 3, Episode 1, to Hugh Hammer, Ulf the White, and Adam of Hull, because you might have missed this if you didn't look close enough. It appears as though they're waiting to ambush Aemon Targaryen and Vhagar on the Isle of Faces. If you look closely at the scene where the Green Man grumbles and draws Hugh Hammer's attention, followed by Alice's arrival, you'll notice that Harrenhal is in the background, and there's a stream of water separating it from where Adam, Hugh, and Ulf have made their camp. Where Daemon could have threatened the carved trees on the Isle of Faces with his one dragon, now those trees were being threatened by 3 dragons, and as their protectors, the Green Men were obliged to deal with any threats to them. The fact that Adam, Ulf, and Hugh were able to land on the Isle of Faces alone proves that this place is accessible only to dragon riders or people whom the Green Men give express permission to enter. In the main timeline of the series, only one character has visited the Isle of Faces and taken the Green Men's counsel. That's Lord Howland Reed, who left Greywater Watch and traveled to the Isle, emerging shortly before the infamous tourney of Harrenhal 281 AC. In the books, Mira Reed tells Bran Stark a story about that tourney with Howland as its unnamed protagonist, and the Crannog men of the Neck are said to be closer to the Children of the Forest, even the Starks of Winterfell. Interbreeding between the children and the Crannog men was said to have been frequent. Jojen Reed is a green dreamer with moss-green eyes like the green seers of the children, and Howland most likely got access based on his lineage, as well as the key role he played during the engagement of the Tower of Joy, where he saved Eddard Stark's life from Sir Gerald Hightower, Sir Oswell Went, and Sir Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning. Before Howland Reed, only one other person was said to have reached the Isle of Faces and communed with the Green Men, and that's where their appearance in House of the Dragon becomes truly relevant. The Green Men and their connection to House of the Dragon Season 3. Explained. Like we mentioned a few seconds ago, the first reason we've been seeing the Green Men around Harrenhal is because they're tasked with protecting the carved trees on the Isle of Faces, and dragons represent the greatest threat to them because they can access the Isle and burn the trees with dragon fire. But the second reason they're showing up is because one of the 4 characters that have seen them is supposed to do what Howland Reed does over a century later, and that character is Adam of Hull. In the books, Adam of Hull participates in the Battle of the Gullet and the fall of King's Landing, but both things turn sour after the latter event. Rhaenyra Targaryen sends out Ulf and Hugh to back up her forces in the Reach, and they decide to go into business themselves, so her increasing paranoia about traitors in her ranks makes her think that Adam would follow their example at some point. In the show, this descent into mistrust has been set up even better by Jace choosing to lock his mother out of the battle literally and then dying because of his overconfidence. Ulf, Hugh, and Adam abandon their post just as Aemond finally sets out for Harrenhal, so when they rejoin Rhaenyra, she'll have a more legitimate reason to question their loyalties. While all three of her new dragon riders are bastards, only one of them will be determined to prove that not all bastards need be disloyal men of low repute, and out of Ulf, Hugh, and Adam, who do you think's going to fulfill that role? So here's the setup for the official reveal of the Isle of Faces and the Green Men after Rhaenyra takes King's Landing and is betrayed by her dragon riders and certain younger members of her stepfamily. She'll become so paranoid that she'll want to prevent all future betrayals by any means necessary. This makes her issue a warrant for Adam's arrest, which will lead to his escape, but leaving his queen to prove his loyalty is one thing, taking actions that do the same is quite another. So after leaving the capital, Adam will be forced to question his next move. And, not getting a satisfactory answer by himself, he'll seek out the one person he knows who has magical knowledge of the future, Alice Rivers. It's Alice who tells the trio of Dragonseed dragon riders to fly to the Gullet because they're missing the battle, and when they arrive, they'll learn that she was right. Adam met Alice on the Isle of Faces, so he'll return there hoping to see her again. Only by that time, Alice will have joined up with Aemond Targaryen, and Aemond himself will be zipping all over the Riverlands trying to goad out Daemon. So without Alice or Aemond at Harrenhal, Adam will be safe yet directionless till his interaction with the Green Men. The books tell us that Adam either takes their counsel or decides to piece together an army from the Riverlords that remain in the Riverlands after the Blacks win all their battles in that region, but we think it'll be both of these things. Also, there's a fan theory that states that the carved trees of the Isle of Faces aren't weirwoods as we know them, because weirwoods are bone white with blood red sap and leaves, but the theory believes that originally their leaves were green. The weirwood's current condition is the result of a corruption of their magic, and this theory might hit overtime on Leg Day if Adam's visit to the Isle of Faces reveals that its carved trees are green-leafed weirwoods. Whatever counsel he receives from the Green Men won't just be about battle tactics, because we know that isn't how prophecy has been depicted in House of the Dragon. Even Daemon's weirwood visions went beyond showing him Rhaenyra needed to become queen. His visions showed him Bloodraven, who probably sent the vision to him from the future. They included a wolf's point of view as it encountered the army of the dead. It featured the red comet, Dany, birthing her dragons, and what appears to be the consequences of the Battle of Tumbleton and Daemon's final battle with Aemond One-Eye. So we suspect that Adam Valerion will not only learn what he needs to do next, but also what happened in the past, and what will happen in the future that makes his actions not only important to preserve his integrity, the shape of the world itself. If Adam doesn't intervene in the final third of Dance of the Dragons on Rhaenyra's behalf, an entire string of prophesized events gets deleted, the wrong branch of House Targaryen gains the Iron Throne, and everything about the future goes to hell. In a way, the story of Game of Thrones is shaped by Adam of Hull's visit to the Isle of Faces, because what he learns there comes from the Green Men. It's not an exaggeration to say the Green Men shape the past, present, and future of the House of the Dragon and Westeros at large from their isolated island retreat. This is why the Green Men are so integral to the plot of Season 3, because their mere inclusion hints at the live-action Game of Thrones universe attempting to bring itself closer to the source. And while Rhaena and Nettles might jump out as glaring exceptions to that assumption, their ultimate roles in the climax of this series could still overlap in such a way that their synchronization could be justified. Without the Green Men, all the mistakes that Thrones made with sending Dany beyond the wall with her dragons, the children creating White Walkers with the very item used to destroy them, will forever remain franchise-tainting inconsistencies. And considering the Thronesverse is only expanding, with the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms and the rumored show/film about Aegon's conquest, getting things right is finally a bigger priority for HBO than making them flashy. Having said that, we hope you guys now understand who the Green Men are, why they're part of House of the Dragon, and what makes them show up when they do. If you want to know more about them, let us know down in the comments section, and we'll make a new video specifically exploring their connections to Westeros' past, with an emphasis on the First Men, the Pact, and the Long Night. And definitely let us know what you think their role is going to be in the series going forward. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more dragon content, and we'll see you guys real soon with yet another video. Until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and we'll see ya in the next one.